With the most recent season of Invincible wrapping up, giving us one of the most climactic season finales of any animated show in recent history, I've begun thinking about the future of superhero media in general, and how Invincible might have finally laid out the very obvious path that superhero stories will probably have to take from here on. But to understand why Invincible succeeds, we have to take a look at how and why other superhero stories, coming at what seems to be the twilight of the genre, are failing. And there is no greater example of this downfall than the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's safe to say the MCU has been on a downward spiral post-Endgame releasing in 2019. I mean, that is the common sentiment online, that Endgame being the culmination of everything the MCU had been building up to was this perfect climactic ending, and that everything afterwards has just been terrible. Except No Way Home, and Guardians 3, and some people really liked Black Panther 2. And people really seem to love Deadpool and Wolverine. Okay, here's a thought. The MCU was never good. No, I'm joking. I don't think the MCU could have gotten as big as it did if it wasn't doing something right, but rather, the problems that many of us are complaining about today didn't just come out of nowhere. They've always been there. They're just a lot more pronounced now because the MCU has lost so much of what made it interesting. I mean, Phase 1 was all about setting up all of these characters individually with their own movies so that when they did inevitably meet, clash, and work together in the Avengers, it was somewhat satisfying to see. Not that all of this was perfectly planned out, but you can tell there was at least a plan. Post-credit scenes are really basic. It's mostly just Nick Fury walking up to whoever the main character was and going, "The Avengers thing, it's happening." But they work because that's all they needed to be. They're teasers for an upcoming single event. Post-credit scenes in the MCU now are the exact opposite. They're drawn out and only exist to make some promise of something vaguely interesting happening later. Spider-Man Homecoming has the infamous post-credit scene with Scorpion, which has gone almost nowhere in the almost 10 years the movie's been out. There's that one at the end of Doctor Strange that teased the Black Guy becoming a villain, but that didn't go anywhere as well. And of course, anything with Kang from Ant-Man 3 is obviously not gonna go anywhere for very obvious reasons. But you see, the problem isn't that these post-credit scenes are poorly planned out teases. The problem is what they represent. The MCU has ballooned in size, scale, and quantity to the point where it's almost too complex for anyone who isn't a superfan to keep up with. Not only are they making more movies each year, but they're also releasing a lot of Disney Plus shows which do have some significant tie-ins with the movies. Take The Marvels, for example, a movie I'm sure a lot of you have even forgot came out. Mrs. Marvel, one of the three main characters of this film, has her entire origin story and a lot of things that would make you care about her as a character tied down to her Disney Plus show. And even if you do argue that The Marvels does a decent job of reintroducing her to the audiences the movie writers know won't be familiar with the Disney Plus show, it doesn't change the fact that audiences who watch Captain Marvel first are being introduced to an entirely new main character who is less developed than her TV counterpart by design. And this is ultimately one of the fundamental issues with the MCU now. When there are so many main characters that are deemed to be important, no one is. And this is where Invincible takes its first surprising step up from most other superhero stuff. All the characters just work. Now obviously a cinematic universe isn't the same as a single story being told over many years of seasons of television, but allow me to posit a greater point. Invincible's characters work because of the inherent limitations of not just television, but animation as well. Well, what does that mean? Let's take a look at Season 1 Episode 5 and Season 3 Episode 5. They're both episodes centered around minor villains, Titan and Machine Head. And honestly, if you're not paying attention to both of these episodes, especially the latter, they may feel disjointed from the rest of their seasons. But they exist to not only flesh out the characters that exist in Invincible, but challenge Mark as a character and as a person. Mark choosing to help what he believes are just regular people in smaller scale operations makes him feel like more of a hero. All of this is done by not only subverting tropes that you expect from mini stories with lower stakes, but also just letting the audience get to know more about characters like Titan and Machine Head. And because animation takes a lot of time and money, not all of these episodes are going to feature high-stakes, kinetic, brutal fights. Sure, this means some episodes get a lower IMDb score, but it strengthens the characters so that those climactic episodes do mean something and hit that much harder. And it's not just Titan or Machine Head, it's almost all the characters. Characters you'd expect to be completely one note like Rexplode or the Immortal or Donald. All of them get their time to shine, and all of them are given more depth than you'd expect. One thing I love about Invincible is that you're not left wondering why a character does something because you intrinsically understand them from what you've been shown. It's not like in No Way Home where I'm questioning why one of the smartest and most rational thinking superheroes tries to use an extremely unstable magic spell on a teenager. Even when the story forces characters to act in somewhat irrational ways, you can always understand why that is, and the story makes sure to tie it into the themes of a larger narrative. Like, everyone gets on Amber's ass about the whole thing, her knowing Mark is a superhero, and while that definitely paints her as somewhat irrational and selfish, it ultimately works in favor of the story's themes about balancing being a superhero and having a normal life. It's less about Mark's and Amber's relationship per se, and more about the overall fact that Mark can pretty much never have a normal relationship because of his position. His relationship with his friends, partners, and family is forever defined by him being a superhero. And you can see the MCU try and do something similar with Spider-Man, but it works to varying degrees across all 3 Spider-Man films. I still think Spider-Man Homecoming is a shockingly great movie. Like, it's such a fun time, and it keeps Peter tied pretty strongly to the greater MCU without relying too much on outside stuff. And what I love most about Homecoming is how much it emphasizes the juxtaposition between Peter Parker the civilian and Spider-Man the superhero. Peter is forced time and time again to choose between his own life or the greater good, and it makes the conflict in the film really engaging. And then Far From Home and No Way Home did like the exact same thing, except this time pretty much none of the villains had anything to do with Peter. Like, I know Vulture, like Mysterio, is actually more pissed off at Tony Stark or the Avengers than Peter, but the reveal that Vulture is actually Liz's dad suddenly makes the conflict a lot more interesting. And back to what I keep saying about characters, Invincible does such a great job of getting you to care about Debbie and her relationship with Mark and Nolan that you feel anxious when she might not be safe. Like in No Way Home, when May died, I wouldn't say I didn't care, but I'd say I was a lot less invested than I think the movie expected me to be, because May is just less of a character in those first 2 films. We're too busy focusing on other aspects of Peter's life, like Iron Man and fucking Mysterio. So when she dies, it's sad and all, but it's not like this big emotional moment that really changes everything. Compare that with when Angstrom breaks into Mark's house and breaks Debbie's arm. This scene right here made my jaw drop. It's just so visceral because we care about Debbie and we know her well enough to want her to live through this. And once again, playing with tropes, you always expect the villain when taking someone hostage to just use them as bait. But here, Angstrom crosses the line that you've drawn in your head, and it's so messed up. I really don't know how they do it. I know Invincible is a violent show, but every season there's just that one moment that turns the violence from that typical spectacle to genuine horror. And moments like this help solidify your investment in the characters without you even realizing. Invincible takes its ideas to their logical extreme, and it makes for entertaining television because it never feels like our characters, themes, ideas are being wasted. I mean, between Zeno and Powerplex, they're both characters that hate our heroes for ruining their lives inadvertently. They both have stupid, dumb plans to get back at them, but I guarantee most of you who watch Civil War can barely remember a single thing about Zeno because he wasn't nearly as entertaining or given as much spotlight as Powerplex. And that's cause Zeno isn't really a character. He's not really supposed to be a character. He's an excuse to have the plot of Civil War happen so we can see Captain America beat the shit out of Iron Man on opening night. And once you start realizing the true purpose of the MCU, a lot of the reasons for its downfall start making sense. The MCU now exists only to fill seats and make money, and nowhere is that more apparent than with the Multiverse saga. The multiverse is a concept that seems to be tailor-made for the MCU. It is essentially the ultimate excuse to put familiar characters in unfamiliar situations or with slight alterations without having to build those characters from the ground up. Multiverse stories operate on the knowledge that you already get the basic gist. You already know what these characters are about, and so theoretically, the multiverse would be best used to— Oh my god, Andrew Garfield! Multiverse fatigue is real, and it's all Marvel's fault. I think it's a creatively bankrupt concept that only a few skilled writers can make work. Case in point, Spider-Man. Oh, no, not that Spider-Man. These Spider-Man. It's kind of weird that there have been 3 Spider-Man multiverse movies, and the worst one is the one that should have been easiest to work with. Now, No Way Home isn't actually bad. I'd say it's one of the stronger recent MCU films, and not just because of a very obvious fan service. No Way Home feels like the worst excuse for the multiverse, pandering to fans by shoving references and old actors in their face. Remember this thing? You liked this thing. Now we've brought it back. Clap. Invincible does the multiverse stuff way better because it showcases that our Mark is special because of his upbringing, something that the show has been saying a lot since the end of season 1. Seeing all these murderous versions of Marks reminds us of his humanity. Once again, the MCU should not have fumbled this, and yet it seems like the fumbling has only just begun.
There is one very, very important character that is required to do Secret Wars justice. Ladies and gentlemen, as proof of the unimaginable possibilities in the Marvel multi-universe, we give you the one person who could play Victor Von Doom.
They announced Robert Downey Jr. would be returning to play Dr. Doom. Now, we don't know anything yet, but the idea of bringing back an actor that had a definitive end to their character just screams desperation. Is this Dr. Doom going to be some multiverse variant of Tony Stark? I don't know, and I don't care.
Bye.